Thank you. Thank you so much. Good evening, good morning, namaste, good afternoon to all of the global members that are here in this Dignified Menstruation, International Dignified Menstruation 2023 celebration. It was an amazing morning session, and it was incredible for me to see such a progress that has happened in dignified menstruation since the co-founding of Global South Coalition for Dignified Menstruation. To hear the youth challenge the current speakers about their use of prioritizing menstrual products and not speaking about dignity or the lack of dignity in menstrual discrimination was extremely powerful. I believe that the youth will change this world, and we must do more so we can hear their voice and so we can support them in their endeavors. Welcome to the 5th International Dignified Menstruation Day panel discussion on the role of policy advocates, donors, and the government for dignified menstruation campaign. The genesis of dignified menstruation is a nuanced tale, woven with the threads of equity, justice, and dignity. Globally, we're officially established in 2018 through the emergence of the GSCDM. However, Radha Paudel, our trailblazing founder and the innovator of dignified menstruation framework, has been steadfastly committed to these core values for the last 30 years. Radha's journey into this transformative work commenced from a deeply personal space, which we are well aware of. She stood as a survivor of menstrual violence, resisting the imposed restrictions that sought to dismiss her right to menstruation with dignity. She also had a profound epiphany that her story was not a solitary one, and she was not alone in her experience of pain, violence, and the absence of dignity. This realization is what propelled her into action, leading to this establishment of a 100% volunteer-led grassroots movement. This movement, spearheaded, mobilizes the global community. Today, we will have panelists from all corners of the globe, which you will see are have woken up at 4 a.m., have woken up at 3 a.m. to be here with you today. And I am deeply appreciative for their time and their commitment to menstrual equity and supporting menstrual dignity. Radha's vision seeks to overhaul the existing menstrual movement, centering dignity as the linchpin for dismantling the deeply ingrained misogynistic and patriarchal structures, be they structural, institutional, or interpersonal. These perpetuate discriminatory beliefs, behaviors, and notions against menstruators. By placing dignity at the forefront, we strive to not only address the immediate challenges faced by menstruators, but also to instigate systemic change. This conference, this dynamic discussion is a testament to the transformative power of an individual's lived experience and the unwavering commitment to fostering a world where menstruation is not a source of discrimination, but a natural and dignified aspect of life for all. Moreover, dignified menstruation marks the pinnacle of the fourth wave in feminism. This innovative, unique framework transcends conventional approaches, providing a robust foundation rooted in evidence and offering tangible solutions. In essence, dignified menstruation emerges as a social justice and human rights transformative tool, instrumental in reshaping the narrative of gender equity. At its core, it's a paradigm shift in the feminist discourse, daring to delve into the insidious roots of misogyny, patriarchy with unprecedented depths. Unlike previous waves, which have primarily focused on legal rights, workplace equality, and reproductive autonomy, the fourth wave, symbolized by dignified menstruation movement, recognizes the need to confront the pervasive discrimination embedded in the beliefs surrounding menstruation and its dissoluble connection to gender-based violence. This is not just merely an abstract concept. It is a dynamic force that draws strength from evidence-based insights and research. By acknowledging the experiences of those who menstruate and substantiating these narratives with concrete data, dignified menstruation provides an irrefutable foundation upon which advocates and other stakeholders can build a compelling case for dismantling the deeply ingrained structures of inequality. With this, let's keep this in mind as we move forward to our amazing panelists and this robust panel discussion regarding the role of policymakers, donors, our advocates, and government agencies for advocating on dignified menstruation. With that, I'd like to ask our panelists, as we move to the first round, please take 1 minute to introduce yourself and your background. Take some time to reflect on why did you accept today's role, specifically in the Dignified Menstruation panel. What is the importance of your particular role in today's panel? I know the question is heavy and time is short, and I believe that you will be able to provide us this. Shageetha, please start us off.
Thank you, Mili. Am I audible? Yeah. So, hello everyone. I am Shageetha Balachandran from Sri Lanka. So, more than 10 years, my focus of work is on women's rights and children's rights. So, I am glad and I'm here with you all today to express my solidarity and to take part in this collective effort in promoting dignified menstruation to end sexual violence and child marriage. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Shageetha. Abdul.
Hello, everyone. Hello. Yeah. Good morning. It's a pleasure to be here with you. My name is Abdul. I've been a teacher for the last 15 years, taking young girls right from kindergarten, even up to tertiary. I have a natural flair for connecting with students and a passion for nurturing young minds to enable young minds reach their full potential. And I also work with other NGOs, to mention a few. I work with Behold Thy God, 𝗙liche𝗹𝗹𝗀, and for community development and empowerment. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Abdul. Welcome. Sarah, please introduce yourself.
Hello, everyone. I'm Sarah Soisa. I'm currently the National Program Analyst working on sexual and reproductive health at UNFPA Sri Lanka. So I've been in the field of sexual and reproductive health, volunteering and working for about 15 years, I guess. So I'm here today to kind of present the case of Sri Lanka, which is a country currently transitioning from a humanitarian setting slowly and gradually. And also my work has mostly been in the grassroots level, but now also more in the policy level. So I would like to bring in perspectives from both aspects to share with you all today. Nice to be here.
Welcome. Thank you so much. And if we can have Sally end us off.
Namaste. Hi, everybody. I'm Dr. Sally King. I'm a medical sociologist. I specialise in menstrual health and associated human rights, and that's based in the UK. So I combine biology with social theory to identify and bust menstrual myths. I'm the founder of Menstrual Matters. This is a website set up in 2016, and it was the first evidence-based information hub on this topic. My work has shown how widespread ignorance and the mystification of menstrual health contributes to gender and racial discrimination here in the UK and elsewhere. So knowledge is really power when it comes to menstrual health and human rights. And so my main aim is to improve menstrual education, first here in the UK, but hopefully beyond. And I'm obviously also here in solidarity with the global movement. Thank you.
Amazing. Thank you so much. It is such a privilege to be here amongst this discussion with researchers and medical sociologists and academicians. And it's really incredible to be with folks that have such a big breadth of knowledge and experience. And you've seen how the menstrual movement has progressed, as well as the larger sexual and reproductive health movement. And I know that you can bring us some insights as to how, what are the gaps that we really see in the historic menstrual movement and how we can move forward from there. So moving on, right on into our second round, we have menstrual discrimination is a form of gender-based violence and human rights violation. It is a multidimensional human rights issue that adversely impacts individuals' physiological, psychological, and spiritual health, degrading their inalienable human dignity. Some examples can be menstrual restrictions of food, water, living spaces. Others can be abstract social beliefs which stigmatize and shame menstruation and thus the menstruator. Take about 2 minutes to please tell us what are some specific menstrual discrimination or restrictions that you have observed in the scope of your context. Also include what are some global menstrual discrimination acts or abstract beliefs that you have observed in your work or in your personal experience. And we'll start this off with Shageetha.
So, menstrual discrimination that starts from the different names and the different words that we are using to avoid to say the word menstruation itself. And also the emotions, the negative emotions that are associated with the word menstruation. So if we take some stats according to Sri Lankan context, in Sri Lanka, with overall population, 52% of the population are now women, and 4.2 million are in the age of menstruation. So with inclusive menstruators, I think this percentage might
We might have to skip over Shageetha, as I believe there is some technical error happening on my, is it just on my end, or is she paused on your guys' end as well? Okay. Okay, excellent. So then what we'll do is we'll go ahead and wait until she reconnects. But in the meanwhile, let's go ahead and move forward with the panel as we are a little bit stringent on time. Abdul, could you please provide your insight for this question?
Thank you. Menstruation is a common, natural, and universal biological process for females during their reproductive years that is accompanied by significant physiological and emotional changes. Yet, it is often shrouded in secrecy, stigma, and taboo in many parts of the world, including my home country, Nigeria, and in some parts of Africa. Menstruation is referred to in my home country as the curse, where menstruating women and young girls are often expected to isolate themselves from others. Women and girls are forbidden from cooking or preparing meals, participating in social events, working in the fields, and going to their various religious places. They are considered impure, they are considered filthy, and even cursed while they are menstruating. It inflicts indignity upon women and indignity upon girls and violates their rights to non-discrimination, equality, body integrity, health, privacy, and the right to freedom from inhuman and degrading treatment in Nigeria. Also, another problem in the restricted control, many women and girls have restricted control over their mobility and behavior due to their impurity during menstruation. These misconceptions, myths, and superstitions concerning menstrual blood and menstrual hygiene have potential harmful implications. Remarkable is also the lack of awareness by our parents concerning reproductive health, sexuality, and related issues, which is considered a no-go area. The level of knowledge and understanding of puberty, menstruation, and reproductive health in these rural communities are very, very low. And this is concerning that I will want to bring up on a global scale and see how we can move on from there. Thank you.
Thank you, Abdul. I see that Shageetha has rejoined us. So Shageetha, if you wanted to finish your thoughts. You are muted.
Yeah, thank you. There were some technical issues. So let me finish. Yeah. So then if we see that discriminatory practices under 4 categories of restrictions during menstruation in terms of mobility, participation, to eat and to touch, I would like to share some of the specific restrictions and the discriminatory practices. For an example, for mobility and participations, the menstruators are not allowed to go to school, temple premises, or prayer rooms at homes, and do not allow to participate in sports, festivals, and travel outside. And also to eat certain foods and certain fruits that are not allowed to that are not allowed. For an example, meat, fish, egg, oily foods, and pineapple, papaya. And the restrictions related to touch, for an example, sharing bed with partner and use towels, and sharing the same bed sheets, and sex during menstruation. So these are some of the discriminatory practices that are culturally and socially embedded in the system. And yeah, and one more thing, that not only at homes but also in schools, at workplaces, and also in community, they are observed. Thank you, Mili.
Thank you so much, Shageetha. We'll go ahead and have Sarah.
Yeah, adding to what Shageetha said, in Sri Lanka, about 60% of young girls don't attend school when they have their first menstruation because of religious and more than religious cultural practices. So this is one of the factors that we are trying to address. And also when we look at discrimination, if we take religious places or sacred places, in certain areas, not everywhere, young girls and women, when they have their periods, they cannot go to the religious places or the sacred places. And even whether they have periods or not, some of them can't enter, women actually can't enter some of these sacred places at all. So the biggest issue, what I see here is, and what we know is, it's because menstrual blood is considered to be impure, unclean. So this is one of the biggest misconceptions and myths that we need to address in order to kind of address the larger issue of discrimination and stigma against menstruation. Yeah.
Thank you so much for adding that, Sarah. And let's have Sally.
So I'm based in the UK, and this is where most of my research is conducted. We're a multicultural society, so we share actually many of the same taboos just discussed by other members of the panel, and we have our own as well. But I think the most common, but it's an invisible taboo, and it's a very powerful gender myth here, is that we have the hysterical, irrational, or crazy hormonal menstruating female. This is somebody whose emotions and maybe even our intellectual ability is somehow negatively affected just by the healthy functioning of the female reproductive body. This is an old myth. First, this was blamed on the womb, but now it's usually the sex hormones, the idea that the female sex hormones drive us crazy. None of this is based on any evidence at all. But importantly, it contributes to people not believing women about their experiences, especially pain, but also being the victims of gender-based violence. We're seen as less reliable witnesses, less reliable narrators of our own experiences. So this myth serves to dehumanize and to devalue women. In this way, the menstrual cycle is used to justify gender inequalities in law, in pay, leadership, just power in society and in the workplace. This disbelief in women and the gender pay gap, for example, and other political inequalities are also global problems. So we see this in the annual World Economic Forum's Global Gender Gap report. So my aim is always to promote improved menstrual literacy in schools, maybe workplaces, but specifically within medical training, so that doctors are able to help us if we're in pain. So to help us bust the myth of the hysterical, hormonal, premenstrual women, to stop it being used as a means to justify gender discrimination here and elsewhere globally.
Thank you so much, Sally. And now for our final sort of answer to this question, I would like to have the team play a video from one of our other panelists, Ben, who was unable to be here in the panel today due to a prior obligation.
Friends from the government and non-government sector, the academe, colleagues from other international organizations, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, good day. On behalf of Colombo Plan and its 28 member countries, It is an honor to be addressing you today on the 5th anniversary of the International Dignified Menstruation commemoration with the theme of the role of policymakers for advocating dignified menstruation in the era of 2023 agenda. Allow me to thank Ms. 𝗙cie𝗹𝗹𝚪, the founder and director of the Global South Coalition for Dignified Menstruation, for inviting me to grace this forum and share my thoughts on the matter. Director 𝗙cie𝗹𝗪 helped me understand how advocating for dignified menstruation is integral to ending sexual violence and child marriages, which is also this year's theme. Personally, the Dignified Menstruation Initiative helped me secure a better appreciation on the wide range of stigma and human rights concerns being experienced by women undergoing the usual menstrual cycle. Fortunately, lately, there have been wide discussions on the stigma associated with menstrual health and hygiene management among advocates, academic experts, humanitarian professionals, human rights, and global development specialists. The negative perception that a person who is undergoing this cycle is abnormal, impure, dirty, or sinful is a finding of many researchers that can translate to so many negative consequences. It is common to find communities where women and girls know little about their normal physiological development as they advance through life. Many learn about menstruation only when they reach puberty, which is often a frightening and confusing experience. In most communities, managing the menstrual cycle is usually guided by cultural and traditional practices handed down through generations. Women could easily spend 3 to 8 years menstruating over their lifetime, during which they might face menstruation-related exclusion, neglect, and discrimination. Gender inequality, traditional beliefs, extreme poverty, and humanitarian concerns can result in the menstruation process becoming a time of deprivation and stigma, which can undermine the enjoyment of fundamental human rights, specifically by menstruating women. Recent researches have made us aware that some constraints during menstruation are self-imposed, that menstruating women or girls may fear participating in activities like school, athletics, or social gatherings, resulting to a more restricted public life engagement. Women have been perceived as unclean and are not allowed by some communities to do everyday household chores. Another misconception is the idea that menstrual cycles diminish physical or emotional capacities of women, reinforcing gender inequality and creating barriers to certain opportunities. Access to safe bathing facilities and menstrual supplies, including those in impoverished school systems, prisons, and homeless shelters, are also a reality in some countries. And last but not the least, I think this is the most important consequence, menstruation is believed to be an indication that girls are ready for marriage or sexual activity, which leave them vulnerable to a host of abuses, including child marriage and sexual violence. Now, given this information,
Thank you so much for that. I think in examining the myriad of facts of menstrual discrimination as shared by our panelists, which looking at the themes that I was sort of noting down, you see that we have restriction to mobility, restriction to touch, you have stigma, you have shame, you have conversations around the invisible and the visible sort of aspects of menstrual discrimination. And time again from our different panelists, we hear about the sort of isolation and restrictions. And we're really confronted with the complex and deeply rooted issue that manifests itself in countless ways, overt and covert. Menstrual discrimination is this insidious violation of human rights. It really permeates our society, necessitating a comprehensive framework such as dignified menstruation to decipher its mechanisms and grasp its profound impact. This violation extends its reach across menstruation of all ages and menstrual statuses, establishing this unequal power dynamic as alluded by our panelist, and which upholds this sort of entrenched misogynistic and patriarchal ideologies, thereby subjugating those who menstruate to various forms of violence. It's really crucial to note the alarming lack of research dedicated to this pervasive issue. And we had Sally, who kind of alluded to that as well, is this sort of lack of evidence-based values and beliefs, as well as this alarming lack of research. The historical trajectory of menstrual discrimination spans centuries, intertwining with the entrenched in religious texts across various faiths, from Hinduism, Christianity, to Islam and Judaism, where menstrual blood is unjustly labeled as impure, dirty, and sinful. This portrayal inherently designates menstruators as the sinners, as the less than, inferior, or less intelligent, or maybe they're hysterical. And this is all in comparison to those who do not menstruate. This results in an unequal power dynamic, leaving menstruators in a vulnerable position, subjecting to various forms of gender-based violence like rape, sexual violence, domestic violence, child marriage, intimate partner violence. Furthermore, the historical and current menstrual movement continues to prioritize addressing the symptoms of menstrual discrimination, but not the root cause. Its primary focus revolves around ensuring access to essential elements such as menstrual products, clean water, proper sanitation, and sexual and reproductive health care, which is all an integral aspect of menstrual equity. However, as we have heard time and time again during this conference, despite these critical components, the movement often overlooks the most fundamental element, the dire need to preserve and uphold the very dignity of menstruators. In the recent decade, we can observe the work around menstrual health and hygiene under different frameworks like menstrual health in 2012, menstrual management in 2014, and most recently under the guise of period poverty. These are all focused on management, infrastructure, and products. So I urge you all to keep this sort of question in mind as to why are we stuck on these tangible sort of intervention bases of menstrual products, providing menstrual products, building clean toilets, building infrastructure, building more access to healthcare, which is all very, very important. But why have we not addressed the root cause of sexual violence, of domestic violence? Why have we not addressed these root causes in the decades of work that we've done in menstrual movement, in the global menstrual movement? Why? So with this thought in mind, we move on to the third round. And to my panelists, I ask, what are some interventions that you have conducted through the scope of your work to address menstrual discrimination? And what are some examples that specifically target menstrual dignity? And if there's a gap of that, I urge you to be open and free with us. And we'll have Shageetha start us off.
Okay, so here it's heavily raining in Colombo in Sri Lanka. So then I partly understood your question. So the question is, what are the initiatives that we are carrying forward, or is that okay? So
Yes.
I'm engaged with currently with an organization, Shanti Margam, who are working for the mental health well-being and emotional well-being for those affected by violence. So we are now focusing in the areas Colombo urban poor communities. So with them, after all these studies, we have found out that mobilizing youth, educating youth, and building their capacity and on this awareness on menstrual health management. So they will act as youth leaders or the catalyst in each community, so that we find it quite effective. And then we are having an ongoing social media campaigns on advocating these issues, which get the wider audience attention. And also the surveys and the researches that we are conducting extensively on existing policies and practices, from the taboos, myths, discrimination associated with menstruation. So that with those studies, that would help us, the findings and the recommendations help us to advocate with the other CSOs and the decision makers, policy makers in future. Thank you.
Thank you, Shageetha. Can we have Abdul?
Yeah, thank you. So the question actually peculiar to my country, Nigeria, but two most vulnerable demographics that we are working with right now are internally displaced persons, women and children, women and young girls and internally displaced persons due to conflict. Now, due to the peculiarity of their environment, they can't assess dignity in menstruation. And also the religious beliefs, the traditional and cultural taboos inhibits their expressing their dignity as women in menstruating. So my NGO, the humanitarian, looking into the 4 pillars of menstrual dignity and establishing this amongst the women and young girls, which number 1 is privacy. They don't have access to their privacy. These women and children are more into eating and getting their daily food, their daily survival, and rarely has access to stuff to use while they are menstruating. Their privacy is not fair. They don't have the space, autonomy, and personal safety is very, very rare among those women. And these are one of those things we are trying to create awareness and accessibility to. Another thing is inclusivity, which includes the cultural responsiveness and gender affirming care that they should be open to, which is not also accessible to them. And then access to all sort of amenities that can help and ease that periodic pains they face every now and then. And the most important thing also is education, educating the mothers, educating the young girls amongst even secondary school girls, pre-pubescent girls, educating them on their first menarche, their first menstruation process, what to do. All these are what we are looking into and trying to address to create menstrual dignity amongst women and girls, especially the most vulnerable of them all, which is the internally displaced people right now. Thank you.
Thank you, Abdul. Now, can I have Sarah?
Yes, so if we talk about interventions in Sri Lanka with UNFPA, we have a few things going on. Like I said, we are moving from a humanitarian situation to a more like a general situation. But one of the immediate response things that we do when it comes to dignity is the kits that we provide. We have different types of kits, the maternity kits, the dignity kits, and we also came up with something called the menstrual health kit, specifically for adolescent girls. Because with the economic crisis, we realized more and more girls were actually not going to school because they couldn't afford sanitary napkins, and also women who do labor work and daily jobs also couldn't actually go to work because they couldn't access sanitary napkins. So as a result, we provide these custom-made kits with soap and sanitary napkins and detergent and underwear to adolescents, young women, pregnant women, and also this time we kind of expanded it to people living, young women living with disabilities, and also sex workers who have actually taken the brunt of the crisis. They cannot even access basic requirements, which also affects their livelihood. So we are looking at all of those categories of communities with our support. But apart from that, we continue to do our advocacy and sensitize religious leaders and also faith-based groups. Because when we really look at menstrual health and hygiene, we have really seen that faith-based groups and religious leaders have a role to play, because we are pushing for one of the most important things, comprehensive sexuality education, which provides accurate information on sexual reproductive health, including menstrual health and hygiene. But as a country, we've been backtracking a lot in this area because of the issues or the challenges that we mostly face from the religious leaders and religious groups saying, oh, you can't talk about menstrual health in front of boys. This shouldn't be in the curriculum. This shouldn't be. So it's very important for us to, from a community level to the decision-making level, to sensitize the decision-making kind of religious leaders plus the communities. And of course, it's very important that we work with adolescent girls themselves. So we work with adolescent girls from 12 to 18, sensitizing them using arts, theater, movies, creative means to kind of, for them to come up with issues, challenges, and find solutions, and also to kind of change their behavior from even using disposable napkins to reusable napkins, like connect them with the environment. So some of these are some of the key efforts that we are doing at the moment in Sri Lanka.
Thank you, Sarah. Let's have Sally go ahead and end us off for this round.
Thank you. So Menstrual Matters is a non-profit. It's free to access the website. It's a resource for anyone who wants to learn about their body or their menstrual health. I also conduct workplace, university and clinical training workshops to try and improve menstrual literacy. I write blogs, articles and books busting menstrual myths, and I run campaigns to improve menstrual health literacy. I also attend UK government meetings on women's health, but I must admit I don't think anybody listens to me. It's not considered a massive priority in this country yet. In terms of addressing menstrual dignity, the good news is that evidence-based information, the actual facts about why we have periods and what is happening in our bodies, is also very empowering. By removing the mystery and the associated anxiety people might have around periods, we can feel more positively towards them and our bodies and towards people who menstruate in general.
Thank you so much. Thank you all panelists for your insight into the vast spectrum of menstrual discrimination and interventions that your specific sort of sector has taken. I think that when we're thinking about your answers, there seems to be, this sort of predominance of supplying menstrual products, of education around menstruation, menstrual health, which is again all super important critical components of dignified menstruation. And also it seems there is room to expand in all of these different spaces to prioritize dignity again and again, right? So like having this sort of prioritization of dignity for menstrual products, for sort of the infrastructure, for in the schools and in these policies as well. So I think, one of our critical research endeavors has been to review policies of major international human rights instruments, such as the Human Rights Declaration 1948, the CEDAW, the Convention of Child Rights, and the United Nations Sustainable Developmental Goals in 2015. And we have really sort of analyzed these documents within the framework of eliminating child marriage, which we know is a form of gender-based violence. And we've also studied the national policies and local initiatives taken within the countries with the highest rate of child marriage, which are Bangladesh, India, and Niger. And in our comprehensive analysis, we did find, this sort of striking revelation that both national and international policies lack this direct strategies aimed at tackling the root cause of child marriage, menstrual discrimination. And so the absence of initiatives addressing this sort of early developmental of unequal power dynamics through menstrual violence and stigma is particularly noteworthy, because why is there this gap? Why have we not established direct strategies to target menstrual discrimination? Why does the United Nations still fail to acknowledge menstrual discrimination as a human rights violation and as a public health and global health issue? Why is it still described as a harmful traditional practice when it's clearly evident and starkly evident that it is something that is pervasive globally, and it is something that impacts every single menstruator and non-menstruator, both individually and as a collective society? And as we know, the reason for the celebration of the International Dignified Menstruation Day in December 8th, during the 16 days of activism against gender-based violence, is due to this sort of negligence and suppression and sort of deprioritizing menstrual discrimination, and obviously no talk about dignity in a larger international global sort of platform. And so then it comes to thinking, how can we even imagine there to be a sustainable sort of impact or solution when we don't even actually address the issue or even state that there is an issue? And the decades of persistently high rates of gender-based violence are starkly evident in alarming statistics. 1 in 3 women globally have experienced physical or sexual intimate partner violence or non-partner sexual violence in their lifetime. Equally distressing is the fact that 650 million women currently alive were married as children, with an annual incidence of at least 12 million girls that are married before reaching the age of 18, and this equates to 28 girls married every minute. Let's think about that for a second. 28 girls are married every minute, and 1 in every 5 girls enters a marriage or a union before the age of 18. So since the beginning of this conference, how many young girls have gotten married? These are sobering thoughts to think about, and they're sobering statistics that underscore the urgent need for more effective interventions and a paradigm shift in addressing gender-based violence, child marriage, integrating dignified menstruation into every scope of practice around menstrual equity. And it has to begin with the United Nations accepting this in an international platform, and of all of us stakeholders adopting dignified menstruation practices into our own policies and strategic framework for this next 2024 year. So with this, I'd like to expand into our 4th round. So after sort of talking about this insidious global impact of menstrual discrimination, as well as the gaps in understanding the root cause, what are some solutions that you see that can mitigate this sexual and menstrual violence directly? And now that we've discussed the critical principles which guide dignified menstruation, I would like to know, what changes do you imagine that you will bring to your organization or your work? What is your commitment to dignified menstruation moving forward in this particular scope of work that you work in? And I know that we have people from all different sort of stakeholding positions, so I'm excited to hear what you have to say to us. Shageetha, please start us off. You are muted. Oh, there you go.
Okay. So when we think about impact, what I found that there is a deep level of ignorance and silence in addressing these issues. So these are the challenges for the menstruators, to be vocal about it and to say no to these discriminatory practices. So as a mitigation practices or priorities that we can see, like stakeholders or the rights holders, they should have to prioritize dignified menstruation and menstrual health management. And also the resources allocating that should be accessible and affordable and acceptable by the affected and the disadvantaged people. And in terms of
awareness, self-awareness. So we have to advocate on raising self-awareness and changes in knowledge, actions and practices that has to be deconstruct the root causes of the power and patriarchy that is embedded in the perceptions and the practices of menstruation. So I believe it is a slow but a gradual and a consistent process when we think about bringing the impact in this. Thank you.
Abdul, if we could just take a minute to answer this question for us.
Thank you very much, Mili. It's saddening to hear that 28 girls get married every minute. It's really saddening. As an educator, though, I think open dialogue is the way out. Here in Nigeria, menstruation is considered, of course, it's a taboo to talk about it openly. It's a taboo to express or to say anything about it, really. In two parts of Nigeria, like the western part, the southwestern, southeastern, the southern part, it's much, much, much better. The women are much aware, but not so in other parts of the country. So to start with, open dialogue should be one of the things to be advocated for. And hello. Yeah, and also I believe that we can have school clubs, we can have after school where menstruation is being discussed amongst both boys and girls. I mean, those boys and girls are going to grow up into adults in future, and then they might be able to create a more enlightenment amongst their peers for easy access to information to younger girls and younger generation. That's also one aspect that I think we can work on. Another is campaign and advocacy on menstruation, such as petitions to reduce tax. You know, things are very expensive here. To get access to tampons and stuff like that is almost like 500 to 1,000 over here. So it's not easily accessible if the government can do that. And also social media campaign, girl education, sex education, the curriculum, the school curriculum can be changed to accommodate all of these to talk about the importance of menstruation in not just the life of the girl, but in the life of the family, in the life of the country as a whole, to make them know that it's not a sin to be menstruating. No, it's actually a blessing, and it's not a taboo. You can come out and talk about this openly without being shamed or isolated in any way. So if the curriculum can be changed, it will go a long way. If there's open dialogue, if there's then our religious brothers, religious centers can also be encouraged to talk about this openly. And we have to start with a discussion. We have to meet and discuss. We have to have an open dialogue. It doesn't have to be a hush-hush, as it has been for the last few decades here. And hopefully things will change. Thank you.
Great, and I'm sure that you'll be including dignity as in the center of all of the new work that you're talking about. So thank you so much. Sarah, we'll give you about 30 seconds to a minute, okay? So sorry, I'm getting some comments to speak this.
Yes, so two things I would say. One is definitely the colleagues mentioned as well, comprehensive sexuality education as a solution is a key area to look at, because it definitely looks at dignity and also provides accurate information. So even men and boys are educated and involved in the whole conversation without leaving them apart, developing and like having empathy, being able to have empathy. So I would say the biggest and the main solution I would say is menstrual health education, including comprehensive sexuality education in a formal school setting and an informal setting. And the other area to look at is something that we are also currently working on, is to jump on the climate agenda. Climate change is big, and there's definitely an impact of menstrual health products and all that. If we are to have younger generations or others to change the behavioral patterns, there needs to be a lot of behavioral change related communication and efforts to kind of change it, because that's what people have been used to. And also because of issues around virginity. For an example, in Sri Lanka, things like menstrual cups and tampons are not an option to many young girls and women who are unmarried in rural areas. So to tackle all of this, I would say comprehensive sexuality education and looking at climate change as a way of advocacy would work out quite well. Yeah.
Thank you, Sarah, and thank you for mentioning the part about climate change. That is very, very important and a vital component of dignified menstruation as well, to make sure that things are environmentally safe. So thank you for that. I will have Sally go ahead and end this round for us. Please sort of prioritize, why is dignified menstruation important to the global movement as you work in that space?
Right. Well, education is key, as everybody has said. And as the theme of this year's Dignified Menstruation Day reflects, by wrongly positioning periods as a signifier of womanhood or adulthood, we're needlessly endangering and limiting the lives of hundreds of thousands of girls. Knowing that girls under the age of 16 are actually far more likely to die in childbirth and pregnancy, and that the period evolved to try and protect us from these dangers, might even help combat some of the sort of dangerous social practices and beliefs. And in terms of actions that I can take moving forward, I think I'm going to look into translating my resources into many different languages. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you so much. And so in our conclusion, as we bring this final panel session to a close, I extend a heartfelt gratitude to all partners of GSCDM, as well as all the panelists for making time and the effort to be here today, despite the different time differences, and for engaging in this dynamic discussion on the role of policymakers and stakeholders in advocating for dignified menstruation. And I urge all of us to continue to reflect on the transformative nature of dignified menstruation, challenging the conventional narrative that confines the menstrual cycle to the mere 5 days of bleeding or the reproductive years. It acknowledges that individuals navigate different phases of their cycle, spanning premenstrual, menarche, reproductive years, pregnancy, premenopause, menopause, and even after death. This recognition would propel us into embracing menstrual discrimination and dignified menstruation as a life cycle and a life cycle solution, urging for a more comprehensive approach. And the heart of dignified menstruation is the unwavering demand for inclusivity. It goes beyond recognizing and prioritizing the needs of all menstruators, with a particular emphasis on those in the vulnerable communities. And this inclusivity extends to trans and queer menstruators, disabled menstruators, those in poverty, and others facing unique challenges. By broadening the menstrual movement and reframing it as a human rights violation rather than solely a woman's issue, we compel the wider social justice network to acknowledge and intervene, crucial in dismantling social norms and systemic structures perpetrating discrimination based on menstrual status. Dignified menstruation, we call on all of you individuals and stakeholders to appeal to the United Nations so that we can challenge them to acknowledge menstrual discrimination as a human rights issue and a global public health issue, as well as adopting the December 8th as International Dignified Menstruation Day on their 16 days of gender-based violence activism. And we challenge them to adopt this quickly. And we are pleased to introduce the Dignified Menstruation Training Manual, this comprehensive manual, which I was so fortunate and proud to be in contribution of a very unique and innovative sort of framework that guides stakeholders interested in integrating the framework. We encourage individuals and organizations to translate this manual to local languages so we can enhance accessibility, fostering a widespread understanding of and commitment to dignified menstruation. Ultimately, to address menstrual discrimination, we must confront the historical roots and challenge these deep-seated prejudices ingrained in religious and societal narratives. So with that, I say that only through collective effort between local, national, international organizations and an unwavering commitment to dignity, and for all of you watching us to commit and prioritize dignity, can we break the chains of menstrual discrimination and pave the way towards a more just and equitable future for all. Thank you so much to all the panelists again, to all the audience, both in person and global. We are deeply appreciative.
धन्यवाद Mili Adhikari ज्यू